Hello, my name's Charlie from the Way Biblical Fellowship, and this week's Torah portion was Ki Teitze. Contains 74 of the 613 mitzvahs. It's an interesting Torah portion to study. Hopefully it'll offer you some insight into what mitzvahs are all about. We looked at things like judging other people, the importance of some sort of a cultural reference, and talked a bit about remembering Amalek and how in fact we defeat Amalek. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Okay. I still don't know how to pronounce this correctly, by the way. Ki Teitze, I think it is. Have I said that wrong? I'm getting a funny look from. Okay. No, Ki Teitze, when you go out. Okay. Right. The 74 of the 613 instructions of Torah are found in this parsha. Some see these as archaic commands that wrap people in bondage instead of words of life. They do, sadly. Some folk turn their nose at these words that reveal the heart of YHVH and take you deeper into relationship with Him. That's what they're designed to do. So, do you want to go swimming in the deep end? Do you? Because these words often offer more than just meets the eye. On the surface, we can go a bit deeper. For example, do not muzzle an ox when it treads out the grain. Okay, that's from Deuteronomy 25:4. It's not a case of, well, what's that got to do with me? I haven't got an ox. Which is, one attitude that you could adopt. Yeah, whatever. That's not the attitude. You can see from reading the writings in 1 Corinthians 9 and in 1 Timothy 5:17-18, which says the following: let the elders that rule be well counted worthy of double honour, especially those who labour in the word and doctrine. For the scripture saith, thou shalt not muzzle the ox that treadeth out the corn, and the labourer is worthy of his reward. Okay. The scripture is not shallow, it is not just a dead legal document, it's alive, and it teaches us about the heart of our Creator. Yeshua taught this, didn't he? Do not kill, but it does definitely mean, by the way, do not kill. Yeah, but it also means more. It goes beyond physical deeds to thoughts and emotions and attitudes and words. And when I picked this picture, I couldn't help but notice this fella here. He's just got the oddest face. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know what's going on in his head. But I don't know, he looks very mischievous, doesn't he? But there you go. Okay. 74 of the commandments. The Hebrew word's mitzvah. We've got the word commandments. Okay, that's because when the Bible was translated, it was translated by people who thought in terms of monarchies and reigning and this, that and the other, and Henry VIII and off with his head. So we've got the word commandments and all that comes with that. But that's not the Hebrew concept at all. The word mitzvah, you see, usually mistranslated into English as commandment, is actually a form of the word zavar, meaning to connect or to attach. A mitzvah is a God-ordained way to connect or attach ourselves to the Messiah. The idea is not to perform a mitzvah in the sense of accomplishing a task for a taskmaster. The idea is to interact with YHVH. So this is 74 different ways we can interact with our Creator. Okay, Matthew 11:29-30 says this: take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. What we're getting taught as we go through the Torah is not something that's a big 74 commandments. That's not what it's about at all. The Lord's explaining to us who He is, and He's given us an opportunity to connect with Him. Now, when I looked at this, and I looked for pictures of what ox look like out together, I found this, which I thought was quite interesting, which is the common Christian view of what it means to actually do any of the Lord's mitzvahs. See, there's a fella in the back saying, do this, do that, perfection. And there's an arrow saying, he's a hypocrite. And then you've got the guy saying, it's too hard. And this guy, I'm assuming, Jesus saying, rest, I'll do the pulling. I'll do the pulling. Hang on. Being yoked with the Messiah, is this what the Christian world thinks it's about? Is this what people think commandments are about? They're not. They're mitzvahs, and they're all about being connected and attached to the Lord. And there's a guy called William Bullock Sr., Rabbi's son's coming here in September, and he wrote the following about being yoked, okay? Each mitzvah, mishpat, and chuk of Torah is a link of Messiah's easy yoke and light burden. When you are yoked with someone stronger than you, the result is that you do not do anything solely in your own strength. You just have to stop resisting and cooperate. Where the person with whom you are yoked goes, you go. At whatever pace and in whatever direction the person with whom you are yoked moves, you move. You abide in the one with whom you share the yoke. Don't fight it, embrace it. Enjoy the closeness to the Master. Enjoy the opportunity to learn to think the way he thinks and to feel the emotions he feels, and adjust your schedule and priorities to his. That's what it means to be yoked to Yeshua. No, I can't do it. That's not what it's about. Torah is not about earning salvation, by the way. It's about developing increasingly intimate relationship and communion with him in real time. It's about embracing his lifestyle and buying into our divine purpose as the chosen helpmate of the creator of the universe. We're supposed to be his bride. We're supposed to be preparing for this. Okay, 74 mitzvot coming up, so ask yourself, what is my attitude towards Jehovah's instruction? Bear in mind that they all speak of Yeshua, all of them. Because this is what it says in John 5:45-47. Don't think that it is I who will be your accuser before the Father. Do you not know who will accuse you? Moshe, the very one you have counted on. If you really believed Moshe, you would believe me, because it was about me that he wrote. But if you don't believe what he wrote, how are you going to believe what I say? It's an interesting one for the Christian world to take on board, isn't it? The ones who actually think, oh, it's all garbage, that, and it's all done away with. These are the words of the Messiah himself. Jehovah sees our deviation from the constitution of his kingdom, which is what the Torah is. Do you belong to his kingdom or the kingdom of the enemy? If you belong to his kingdom, there's a constitution. There's a king and a constitution, and the constitution is the Torah. And this is it. Jehovah sees our deviation from the Torah as nothing less than a seed of calamity and disaster in our lives. Do you see your little sins and deviations from Torah that way, or do you just shrug at the attitudes and words and actions in which you indulge that conflict with the Torah and just say, that's just the way I am? Or do you say, it's part of my personality? Okay, God loves me anyway, so why change? Is this your attitude? James 1:14-15 says this, but every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and when sin is finished, it brings forth death. So you might call it a little sin, okay? But it brings forth death. Proverbs 14:12, there is a way which seems right to a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. It's all right, don't worry about it. It's cool. Is it really? The words of truth say that it is not cool and that it leads to death. And it might seem right to a man, but it isn't right in Jehovah's eyes, and he knows best. Regarding transgressing the Torah, okay, just picture the scenario. It's your first day at work. You've been rescued from the dole queue. You've been given a hope of a future. You join the company on Monday and you don't really know anything. You've just expressed your desire to be a part of what they're doing. Nobody is going to expect you to have a clue as to what to do on your first day. Just that you turn up presentable and on time. Okay, does that sound fair? Does it sound a bit like this? Acts 15:19-21. Wherefore my sentence is that we trouble not them, which from among the Gentiles are turned to God, but that we write unto them, that they abstain from pollutions of idols, and from fornication, and from things strangled, and from blood. For Moshe of old time, and in every city, them that preach him being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day. In other words, turn up presentable, respectful to Jehovah, and you'll learn as you go. Yeah? Just like as if you just joined the company. Okay, the guy at work, he asks lots of questions, he learns fast. Okay, you're so delighted with the opportunity that you've been given that you're keen to please the owner of the company, who in turn is delighted to help you to progress in any way he can. 1 John 3:22. But whatsoever we ask, we receive of him, because we keep his commandments and do those things that are pleasing in his sight. Do we really wish to please Jehovah? Because if we do, we keep his commandments. And when that's our attitude, when we ask from him, we receive, because he wants us to progress. Or do you adopt this attitude? We're all on a journey, man. We're all on a journey. I'm made up with the job. Just think about it. I'm just not ready to commit to coming in 5 days a week as yet. And as for starting at 9 a.m, well, it doesn't fit in with me social life. So I'd love it if you would just quit judging me. I've only been here a month. Okay? I admire you all so much because you're all totally on it. Spot on to you. But I'm just going to have to take things at my own pace. Yeah? Imagine this in the workplace. By the way, as for playing the online casino games in company time, I'm well aware that it's against company policy, but I'm only doing it for half an hour here and there. Yeah? And I'm going to take some time out to have a good think about what I should do about it. Ridiculous. Probably most of next week, actually. Yeah? I appreciate your concern, by the way. Would this wash in a company that you just joined? This kind of an attitude? Would it? Okay, 1 John 3:8-9. Whoever makes a practice of sinning is of the devil, for the devil has been sinning from the beginning. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. No one born of God makes a practice of sinning, for God's seed abides in him, and he cannot keep on sinning because he has been born of God. Somebody turning up for work looking like this isn't good enough. Somebody with that attitude in a job is not good enough. And yet we think we can turn up and God will take anything we're willing to offer him and to expect him to go, yeah, it's cool. Okay? The guy at the company carries on and he says, with regards to my hanging around with the staff from our rival company, all I can say is that they're lovely people and they understand me. They're so chilled out and they dig me. They even reckon I've been pushing myself a bit hard and say I should slow down a bit. Start thinking about myself and stop putting myself on a guilt trip. Okay? People, it's odd, isn't it? People who want to live a life of rebellion against God always seem to manage to find other people who are willing to tell them, it's all right, that, yeah, oh, you're doing fine, it's brilliant, spot on, don't worry about that. John 15:19, if you were of the world would love you as its own, but because you're not of the world, because I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. 2 Corinthians 6:16-17. What agreement at the temple of God with idols? For you are the temple of the living God. As God hath said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord. Touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. These are instructions from our Creator. He's asking us not to hang around with people who think it's okay to sin. He's asking us to be separate from them because we have been called out of the world. That is not to be our attitude anymore. We're a member of his kingdom. We abide by his constitution because we want to please our king. We're all on a journey and we're all at different stages of the journey. Okay, I get that. People say that. I'm on a different stage in the journey. Okay, but the journey is not from this. Okay, being a little bit obedient, listening to a little bit to what Jehovah is saying, to being a little bit better in our attitude and perhaps considering being a bit more respectful to our king and maybe even doing what he says. That's not the journey. The journey is not, okay, I'm not obedient. Maybe I will be a bit more obedient in the future. That's not the journey. The journey we're on is about getting to know him more and more each day. And we do that by connecting with him through the shemaring of his word. We do this by taking on his yoke and walking where he wants us to walk, cooperating with him to achieve that marvellous destiny to which we've been purposed. That's the journey we're on, getting to know him better and better every day. And it starts with surrender, and it starts right from the word go with obedience. That's how it starts. And respect for who he is. We're not going to go through all of the scriptures in today's parsha, but I suggest that you do when you get home. Okay? I suggest you meditate on his word, that you shema all that you hear from him, that you seek to understand and walk in all his ways. We've said this before, the first and last letters of the Hebrew Torah spell the word lev, which is the word for heart. If you want to know the heart of your Creator, the one who calls you bride, read his Torah, meditate on it, and get to know who he is. Deuteronomy 21:10 to 25:19 is the parsha, and we'll start in verse 10. When thou goest forth to war against thine enemies, and the Lord thy God hath delivered them into thine hands, and that thou hast taken them captive. So there's a big stop point there, isn't it? Enemies. Enemies. Okay? We're in a kingdom, remember, and we've got a king. Enemies. I couldn't help but put this picture up because I just think it's funny. And I just imagine there's a lot of people who walk in churches and they have the following attitude. I wasn't counting on us lovely folk having enemies. Balti vicar. They've got this idea, haven't they? It's all about being lovely. How could anybody possibly have a problem with us? Hang on a minute. If you belong to the Lord's kingdom, you do have enemies. Okay, dispelling the myth of hippie Jesus and his big cuddly doddery old dad. Let's get rid of that for a start, please. I found this picture. Jesus, the original hippie. Jesus might have been, but Yeshua wasn't. He's not a hippie. Certainly not. Okay, Psalm 110, 5-6 doesn't sound like a hippie to me. Jehovah at thy right hand shall strike through kings in the day of his wrath. He shall judge among the heathen. He shall fill the places with dead bodies. He shall wound the heads over many countries. Man. Jehovah is a man of war. In the Song of the Sea we are told Jehovah is a man of war, Jehovah is his name. Exodus 15:3. 2 chapters later in Exodus 17:15, Torah says that Jehovah will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation. Revelation 19:11 says of Yeshua, in righteousness he judges and makes war. And Yeshua himself said to his disciples, get this for hippie talk, he said, do not suppose I have come to bring peace upon the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. There's this idea that our Saviour was some namby-pamby. They've attempted to feminize him and turn him into some big, I don't know what they've tried to do, completely emasculate him. That's not who he was. Jehovah does not desire us to be either passive or pacifist. He does not want his bride to become skilled at either compromise or conflict avoidance. He calls us instead to be vigilant. Okay, and I put here, the enemy has feminized the Messiah, turned him into a soppy, sentimental, anything goes, it's just all about love, man. Yeah, not love as described in the scriptures, of course, which is all about giving. No, this is a groovy love, all about self-satisfaction. Okay, this is all about tolerating that which Jehovah forbids and encouraging in his name all the things that are an abomination to him. That's the kind of hippie Jesus love that they're all about. It's got nothing to do with the scriptures. As we saw the other week when we looked about what love is about, it's all about giving. But the Western idea of love, it's all about me. Remember we said it's like, you make me feel so happy, baby. You're like my dream come true. It's all about me, me, me. That's not what love's about. And the love that they're putting out there is it's completely wrong. Yeshua is not this hippie. And that's ridiculous, isn't it? They've put in the peace love Jesus, and they put in the peace the broken upside down cross. There you go. Why do we have enemies, by the way? Because we're different, or at least we're supposed to be. We are the holy nation, the peculiar people. We don't value the things the world values. I've sat amongst people who claim the name of our God, who actually are exactly like the world and have the same value structure as all the people in the world. There's no difference whatsoever. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on? Something's wrong. 1 John 2:15-17, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. James 4:4 says this, you adulterers and adulteresses, that's really strong language, that, by the way. Know ye not that friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. Okay, so if you're a friend of the world, you're like this woman here, okay? That's exactly what you're like in God's eyes. That's what friendship with the world is like. 2 Timothy 3:12, yea, and all that will live godly in Christ Yeshua shall suffer persecution. Most people who call themselves Christians don't suffer persecution because they don't want to live godly, because they live just like the rest of the world, because they have friendship with the world. That is this adultery in the eyes of our Creator. It's horrendous. It really is horrendous. Is this who we are, or do we give ourselves away for free? Okay, I remember when the Lord called me from just basically calling myself a Christian to actually surrendering and walking with Him. And He gave me this line. He said, I'm not coming back for the filthy whore, but for the spotless bride. And it really stopped me in my tracks and made me... I felt myself shudder throughout my whole being. Who are our enemies? Okay, this is interesting. The word love and the word enemy. The word love, ahav, is aleph, hey, beit. The word enemy, oyeb, is aleph, yod, beit. Okay, so they're more or less the same word, except in the middle of love, there's hey, window, which means a revelation. The aleph represents our Creator, the leader, yeah? The beit represents the house. Okay, so love is a place where the house of God receives revelation of God, yeah? However, an enemy is somebody who between God and the house of God creates a closed fist or a hand instead of the revelation that we should be having. So, an oyeb, which is an enemy, is whatever or whoever comes between or separates the bridegroom king from his household or from his family. That's who your enemy is. Anybody who separates you from your king, that's your enemy. Blaming everything on Hasatan is a common thing that people do as well, isn't it? It was the enemy got in. Okay, well, I think we need to look at it. We do ourselves and Yehovah a disservice if we too readily focus our attention and our energies on Hasatan and fallen angels rather than our great and awesome God. Is Hasatan really our worst enemy? Was it not Yehovah who created him? Have you ever considered the possibility that Yehovah has Hasatan on a short leash, such that he can only do to us what Yehovah allows him to? And just look at the book of Job for that. And think this, have you ever considered that quite against his will, Hasatan is really an unwitting servant of our Yehovah? And you can check out 1 Corinthians 5:5 and 1 Timothy 1:20 for that as well. So when bad things happen to us or to those that we love, we can blame Hasatan if we like, if it makes us feel better about ourselves or our circumstances. But if we do, we may just miss the point Yehovah is trying to drive home. Hasatan has nothing in us unless we give it to him. JP said the other day, somebody said to JP, "You're not scared of Hasatan, are you?" And he said, "Well, I respect it. Of course I do, but I tend to live a life that gives him no opportunity to be able to attack me." Thought that's spot on. Okay. Hasatan has nothing in us unless we give it to him. Our Yetzirah, which is our evil inclination to indulge our fleshly appetites and attitudes, is his ticket in. It is our Yetzirah that causes us, when we're given a choice between Yehovah's way and our flesh's urges, to all too often opt out of Yehovah's plan for our lives and his divine protection. If you look through the scriptures, the enemy is only ever attacking people when the Lord allows it to happen. So if you're under attack in some way, just think to yourself, this is happening for a reason. Everything works for the good of those who love the Lord. There's a reason it's happening. The Lord's trying to bring your attention to something that might be going on in your life that isn't right, that otherwise you might never have come across. Okay, here's a little section of the obvious enemies. Okay, this guy, right? If he's an enemy of God, he's an enemy of ours, isn't he? And he speaks bad things about our God. Basically, calls him a nonsense. Then we've got enemies, haven't we, like the CIA and all these big organisations and stuff, and they're all after us, and they don't like Christians, and they're all our enemy. We'd get that, don't we? And then I just saw this guy, the fella couldn't help but write underneath. Look at his hat is amazing, isn't it? We've got a painting in it and everything, and look at the face. And I just wrote underneath, "Hey, give me that flipping hat, Specky, or I'm going to tell everyone that your beard is made of a glued-on sheep fluff." He looks like he's threatening him. What is going on there? I've no idea. But I recognise this fella as an enemy. I don't know about yourselves, but I do. Okay, there's ISIS. We could recognise ISIS as an enemy, couldn't we? Yeah? If it's an enemy of God, it's an enemy of ours. So many enemies, but ask yourself if they all come uninvited. Okay, and just think about modern media in all its forms, television, magazines. Do all our enemies come uninvited? Okay, I love this meme, and I'm putting it up again. I put it up the other week, but it's incredible. In the last age of earth, people will say they follow me, but will accept magic, lust, murder, rape, violence, and all manner of sins as entertainment. Wow. Can you imagine them all sitting around going, boo-hoo? That's lovely, isn't it? Seriously. I watched something the other day, and it was about a fella who time travelled from, like, I don't know, the 1800s to modern day, and he was planted in modern day society, and he couldn't even walk down the street without... We're surrounded everywhere we go by sin, and we just think it's cool and it's normal. And it's not cool and it's not normal, and we invite it into our homes and call it entertainment. This is good. Okay, the box sets. And think about it. Magic, lust, murder, rape, violence, and all manner of sins and entertainment. This is friendship with the world. This is adultery. If you saw somebody being adulterous, you'd be like, that's disgusting, that's a disgrace, I don't want nothing to do with them. And yet, stick the telly on, friendship with the world. Oh, it's alright, I'm only doing it to God. That's cool. Is it cool? Okay, and a particular favourite of mine, the filthy soap operas that tell people up and down our country that sin is acceptable, that sin's fine, that these people are cool and just get involved in their lives. It's normal. It's not good. We're not of the world. Okay, the television, somebody said, they had a close friend who was in the CIA, and he said, if you could give me one bit of advice, what would it be? And he said, okay, this is important, listen to me. One bit of advice: never watch the television. And I honestly think I see it in people's houses, and it's like an idol in the corner of a room, and it's just, you change channel. It's even got spiritual language attached to it. The fella who's the head of the BBC is called the chief of programming. If you want to be sat there and be programmed by somebody channeling sin and filth and muck into your own living room, into your head, in a system which actually carries a wave and a signal which hypnotizes you, then you're crazy. It's adultery. It's friendship with the world. It's something that everybody needs to address. And then there is the enemy within our own gates. Perhaps ultimately the most dangerous of our enemies are very, very religious people. People who belong to the religious mainstream. Okay, these are the ones of whom Yeshua said the following in John 5:20 and 16:2. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. A time is coming when anyone who kills you will think he is offering a service to God. And Isaiah 66:4-5 says the following. This is talking in verse 4 of all those people who do not shema and hearken to his voice. I also will choose their delusions, and I will bring their fears upon them, much like in Proverbs 1. Because when I called, none did answer. When I spake, they did not hear. But they did evil before mine eyes, and chose that in which I delighted not. Hear the word of Jehovah, ye that tremble at his word. Your brethren that hated you, that cast you out for my name's sake, said, let Jehovah be glorified. But he shall appear to your joy, and they shall be ashamed. I wonder what he means when he's saying, they chose that in which I delighted not. Don't have to think too hard, do you, to get there. Part of living the Shema lifestyle, or Shema lifestyle, you see, involves letting our stronger and wiser covenant partner choose our enemies for us, and accepting the spiritual reality that he brings those enemies across our path on purpose as part of his divine plan for our lives. Jehovah does this whether we like it or not, and whether in our minds at least we are ready or not. He does it because he is sovereign and omniscient, and because he has a plan that is bigger than we are. Always remember, he is in charge, he is sovereign. Okay, now we're going to come to the bit about stoning your kids, and I got some great pictures there. I love this one. The chap peeing on the wall. His face is great. Because you get people, don't you, say, oh, the Torah, stoning your kids. Hang on. I hate it when they do that. It's not about, look what he's done, let's take him outside and bring him. I mean, I'm sure some parents have felt like it, but that's not what it's about. Okay. I know Joshua had particular fun this morning with what went on, but we won't go there. Okay, verse 18 says, if a man have a stubborn, rebellious son which will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and that when they have chastened him will not hearken unto them, then shall his father and his mother lay hold on them, and bring him out unto the elders of his city and unto the gate of his place. And they shall say unto the elders of his city, this our son is stubborn and rebellious, he will not obey our voice, he is a glutton and a drunkard. And all the men of his city shall stone him with stones that he die, so that you put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. Okay, according to the sages, this son is of an age of accountability. He's about 20, and he's still living under the roof of his parents. As a last resort, these powerless parents bring him out to be judged by the elders of the city. There would be a very thorough investigation for this charge, since it could result in the death of the son. All right, what was he charged with? He was charged with being stubborn, rebellious, a glutton, and a drunkard. Jehovah considers these to be very serious charges. For example, rebellion is rejection of the word of Jehovah, and it's like witchcraft, it tells us in Scripture. In this situation, Jehovah has commanded that if you have a child that you have done everything you can to rehabilitate with no result, then you must turn them over to be judged. The reason given for this was because they must put away the evil from among them. There's a recurring theme in this parsha, putting away the evil from among you. The good of the whole nation was more important than individual family ties. The result would be that Israel would hear and fear, which is the exact attributes that were missing in the rebellious son. Okay, we haven't got this in our society at all, which is why we've got an ASBO culture. Okay, there is no historic record that it ever was applied. Think a moment, however, what we have today. We have laws that often favour children over parents. There are laws that do not allow you to properly discipline your children. These laws punish parents who are attempted to keep their children from being stubborn, rebellious, gluttons and drunkards. In Proverbs 13:24 it says, he that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. Okay, that doesn't mean beat the living daylights out of your children at all. This is talking about disciplining somebody in love, just as Jehovah chastises us in love. It's not taking your anger out because you've been annoyed. That's not what it's about at all. What does all the kid glove namby-pamby approach that we live in result in? This is what it results in, doesn't it? Victim upon victim upon victim. That's what we get in our society as a result of, oh, you can't do that to the kid, oh no, oh, put them first, and it's just, I don't know. We end up with this, and it's quite horrific, isn't it? People suffer. Every time there's a way that seems right to a man, but the end thereof leads to death. Okay, the two main themes of this parsha, it's all about overcoming evil with good. The first one is you must not hide yourself. It says this repeatedly, okay? It means that we are not to view our spiritual life as an escape. It means our covenant lifestyle is supposed to be on display front and centre. It means that we are called to be a city set on a hill, and hence should not be hidden, like Jedit Du, the hermit of 1670, as he sits here in his cave. Sometimes I like the thought of sitting there in the cave and myself, but we must not hide ourselves. We have a job to do. That's to declare the glory of God, isn't it? To shine. Secondly, you must purge the evil from your midst, okay? Anything in our personal lives, households and communities that leads us away from the covenant we have with Jehovah is to be rooted out and dealt with before it takes root and wreaks havoc and destruction. Okay, let's have a look at the seed form of stubbornness and rebellion. The word translated stubbornness is the Hebrew word sarah, and this word means to be determined to have one's own way, do one's own will, and act as one pleases, no matter what anyone else may say. The word translated rebellion is the Hebrew word marah, and this word means to act defiantly, to rebel, and consequently to disobey. Right, have a little think about this now. because you just think about it in terms of yourself and ask yourself the questions. In Torah, YHVH says that we should honor our fathers and mothers. Okay, it tells us that in Exodus 20, verse 12. By the way, sages reckon this is the hardest mitzvah to obey. Interesting that, isn't it? They say the easiest one to obey is the one about the bird, and you can have the eggs and you've got to shoo the bird's mother away. But interestingly again, both of them have the promise of leading to a long life. So wait that out. But this is the hardest, okay, to honor your mother and father. The word translated honor is the Hebrew word keved, which means to make heavy with glory. So just think, do I do this to my own parents? To make heavy with glory. Father, I'm going to make you heavy with glory. Think about it. To highly esteem and to constantly praise. YHVH's will is that every child pile up around his or her mother and his or her father things which will bring them esteem and admiration by his or her actions towards others, including but not limited to basic manners and basic truthfulness, outward attitudes, exercise of self-control, moderation, sexual purity in general, and by his response to the instructions, directions, teachings, and the discipline of his or her mother and his or her father in particular. The child either by this fulfills this mitzvah or breaks it. This is to be our attitude towards our parents. Yeah? So ask yourself, is there a little seed of, maybe a little seed of rebellion in there, a little seed of, because we need to root it out. Put the evil out from amongst yourself. Okay, where are you with regards to your parents? Do you bring them honour? And I got a picture of Kevin the teenager. I don't know why, but I always like putting a picture of him in the presentation. Okay, verse 5 says, the woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that do so are abomination unto the Lord thy God. Okay, there's to be a very, very clear, visible delineation between men and women in appearance, in function, and an approach to life. And I've put a note here, I can't help but see in all the police and crime detective dramas that men are always being pushed around, sometimes even beaten up by women. So what we've got is women putting on male roles and men being emasculated. I see it all the time. It's like the boss of every police department in America is a woman. And the men have to go in like this. And then you'll see like them having a big criminal fella having a fight, and this little woman will come along and sorry, and he gets all battered. It's like it's presenting this ridiculous image of what a man and what a woman's supposed to be. But it's not just like one. It's one after the other. Okay, American and European cultures of today actively and aggressively promote gender confusion. This is an interesting one, isn't it? Woo. Whatever's going on there. We've seen this before, the gender-bred person. This was actually something that was given to children in a classroom, and the parents went a bit mental. I don't even understand this. Gender identity, you've got gender queer, gender expression, androgynous, intersex, bisexual. This has been done for children as well. It's horrible, isn't it? And then we've got what the Creator has established as separate and distinct aspects of humanity, and not to be mixed, mingled, confused and diluted. This fella's called Bruce Jenner. I'm sure you've all heard of what's happened with him, and he kind of has morphed a little bit into whatever. Our world is amuck with perversion and misinformation and gender confusion, but YHVH has called his people to a different way, a way that reflects his glory and his goodness to the world. This is an illicit mixture. I don't particularly want to have a go at him, because I think he's a victim. I think he's completely lost and he's a victim. And I think it's really sad. But this is an illicit mixture, and this is the fruit of doing things man's way. According to Torah, the female is not, this is the way we should see things. According to Torah, the female is not a slave of a man or a tool for man's pleasure. She is actually a part of man, taken from him, and without which he's not complete. Similarly, according to Torah, the female is not a ruler over man, but a helper suitable for him. Our covenant partner in heaven calls us not to think of sexuality like the world does, even for an instant. We are not to approach or express our sexuality according to the world's standards. The world uses others for pleasure, or to gain a sense of conquest. The world confuses sexual appetites with issues of identity and destiny. The world reduces sexuality to an animalistic function. Okay, and I just think it's nuts, isn't it? Modern culture would be shocking to somebody who lived in the 40s. Never mind to our eternal Elohim, Yehovah, who does not change. If you took somebody from the 1940s and planted them in today's society, they'd be horrified. Be like, they would. They'd just blow their heads. They'd absolutely freak them out. And we expect Yehovah to go along with it. And no, I don't think so. And if you're cool with it, you've got a problem. We're called to be a holy people, not a profane religious group of do-gooders who like the idea of going to heaven and meeting hippie Jesus, but love all the same things the world does, like casual flings and entertainment that contain sexual or violent behaviour. That's not what we're called to be. In this darkness, by the way, we should stick out everywhere we go, like a sore thumb. Not blend in with the world. We should stick out. They should be like that. Ooh, who go them people? Jehovah created, by the way, your sexual identity, and he alone, in his prescribed way, can bring you fulfillment in that sexual identity. Little word about illicit mixtures, okay? They can be associated with the seventh commandment, the law against adultery. What's adultery? It's simply an illicit mixture. Anytime we have a mixture of the pure with the impure, or the holy with the unholy, we have an illicit mixture that physically demonstrates a spiritual principle. We are told not to be adulterers. That's exactly what this is, an illicit mixture. Ishtar Sunday, Christ is risen. It's an illicit mixture. Verse 9 says this, going on about illicit mixtures. Thou shalt not sow thy vineyard with diverse seeds, lest the fruit of thy seed which thou hast sown and the fruit of thy vineyard be defiled. 1. Thou shalt not plough with an ox and an ass together. 2. Thou shalt not wear a garment of diverse sorts, as of wool and linen together. We'll have a quick look at the first two of these, but I've just put this picture up here. This is actually protesters outside Parliament on the first day of the report stage of the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Bill in the UK House of Lords in January 2008. Report from The Guardian. Okay, and this is people protesting against human and animal hybrids, illicit mixtures. It's gone that far. It's horrendous. They've already started messing with seeds and... Okay, the first law forbids the sowing of different seeds in the vineyard. If we mix the seed, the fruit we produce will not become the true wine of Jehovah. Jehovah has a vineyard. So don't just think, okay, I haven't got a vineyard, so this doesn't apply to me. Let's look a bit further. Isaiah 5:7, for the vineyard of Jehovah of hosts is the house of Israel. Now, if Luke 8:11 tells us that the seed is the word, therefore, it's very easy to understand that the Almighty wants no mixing of his word with any other word in his vineyard, which is Israel. No mixing of his word with any other word whatsoever. No adding the garbage of man to his holy word. None. Next we have the ox and the donkey ploughing together. These animals will have to alter their walk in order to plough the field together. Of course, this brings to mind Yeshua's words on who we should be yoked together with. Because if you're yoked with somebody who's not like you, you have to alter your walk. We shouldn't be yoked with the world, and this scripture tells us. We ought to be yoked to the body of Messiah. 2 Corinthians 6:14-17. Do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship is righteousness with Torahlessness? And what communion is light with darkness? And what accord has Messiah with Belial? Or what part is a believer with an unbeliever? And what agreement is the temple of Elohim with idols? For you are the temple of the living Elohim. As Elohim has said, I will dwell in them and walk among them. I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Therefore, come out from among them and be separate, says Adonai. Do not touch what is unclean, and I will receive you. We read that before. This is really important. Illicit mixing is the reason why we've strayed so far from the Torah and why we've got all this. All this that calls itself Christian, that is hideous. False gospels, people, I don't know what's going on there, who haven't tested the spirits, who've been taken over by a load of absolute nonsense. Okay, verse 12 says, Thou shalt make fringes upon the four quarters of thy vesture, wherewith thou coverest thyself. Right, so get this. The constitution of the kingdom of Jehovah clearly states that those who are in covenant with him, those that belong to his kingdom by royal decree, no messing about. Janet and John read in age 5, or to wear tzitzits or zitvot, however you want to say it. That's what it says. It's quite straightforward. You can't say, oh, I don't quite understand it. It's dead straightforward. And you can't say, I'm on a journey, man. One day I'll get to that stage where I'm willing to be obedient, but I'll stop making excuses, stop questioning the wisdom of the Almighty Elohim, creator of all things. Stop hassling me, man. You've got your walk and I've got mine. I've heard this. Okay? Newsflash, we may all have different callings, but we're all supposed to walk a certain way. 1 John 2:6, he that said he abideth in him ought himself also to walk, even as he walked. Yeshua was without sin. What is sin? Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the Torah, for sin is the transgression of the Torah. Yeshua said, whatever Moses says, do that. And Moses has just said that we're to wear fringes upon the four corners of our garments. This is the constitution of the kingdom of Jehovah. Okay? I'm on my walk, man. Oh, very good. Chapter 23, 1-8 talks of those excluded from the congregation of Jehovah. Okay, I'll go over this quickly because I know I've asked somebody who actually once said he couldn't join the congregation because of his background. Chapter 23, he that is wounded in the stones, is an unusual turn of phrase, or hath his privy member cut off, shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord, even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord. People get the idea that means, oh, can't come to church if I've got anything wrong or I don't know who my dad is. Okay, the word in Hebrew is mamzes instead of bastards. According to the sages, this does not mean people born out of wedlock as sons or daughters of people who could have been married under Torah, but were not. It means instead people being born of sexual unions between close relatives, as prohibited by Leviticus 28 and 30, or by cultic prostitution. Okay, and the exclusion of eunuchs was probably not applied indiscriminately. We know that such mutilations were part of the religious and cultic practices of the nations. The most probable reason for their exclusion from the assembly of the Lord was their divided loyalties. And the text also includes persons of a forbidden marriage and their descendants, usually taken to designate a child who was born as a result of cultic prostitution and was therefore dedicated along with his future descendants to a particular deity. The Lord was rejecting a pagan practice by excluding them from the assembly. That's what he was doing. So what is the assembly of the Lord? People just think it means the whole of Israel. The Hebrew word assembly, kahal, often designates the totality of Israel as a worshipping community, but it can also designate a more technical group of Israelites. This assembly was most probably formed by adult males as a legal governing body. It was distinguished from the totality of the people of Israel in 1 Chronicles 13, 2-4, had authority to divide the land by lot in Micah 2:5, made judicial decisions in cases of alleged crimes, Jeremiah 26:16, performed legal executions, Ezekiel 16:20, and counseled the king in 1 Kings 12:3. By the way, eunuchs appear in Isaiah 56, 4-5. In Acts 8, 27-40, they're not excluded from the kingdom of God. And also in 1 Chronicles 28:8, just a quick example, King David, in the course of designating Solomon as his successor, will issue the decree, now therefore, in the sight of all Israel, the kahal of Jehovah, and in the hearing of our God, the two separate things. Okay, now let's get back to this whole idea of we're all on a journey, man. Okay? Thou shalt not deliver. This is another idea of where you take a scripture and you don't just go, well, we haven't got slaves in that now. Look into it. See if you can see what the Lord's heart is in it. Thou shalt not deliver unto his master the servant which is escaped from his master unto thee. He shall dwell with thee, even among you in that place which he shall choose in one of thy gates, where it liketh him best. Thou shalt not oppress him. Okay? Think about it like this. Are we, who are merely freed slaves ourselves, yeah, because that's what we are. We were redeemed, weren't we? Tempted to deny to others the joy of the freedom we have been given through no merit of our own as a precious gift? Do we offer refuge in a safe haven where people can learn Jehovah's ways, or do we oppress them to our way immediately? Okay, so if we got somebody who used to be a slave who comes into our midst, a slave just like us, okay, what are we supposed to do? We're certainly not supposed to oppress them. Okay, in other words, just as excuses to be disobedient are not acceptable, neither is trying to ram everything down someone's throat the minute they say they want to belong to Jehovah. We're not to oppress them by opposing ourselves heavily upon them, but we're rather to nurture them, to build them up, rather than to batter them down. That's fair, isn't it? We're not to take the approach, we're nurturing people, we're edifying and encouraging people. And we'll look at how we should treat and judge other people a little bit later. Okay, the fathers shall not be put to death for the children, neither shall the children be put to death for the fathers. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin. Okay, this bit of the scripture here, if you read 2 Kings 14:6, king of Judah, Amaziah or Amatyahu, he acts in accordance with this bit of the Torah. And I remember I was reading it, and Jehovah never seems, you know, when you read 1 Kings and 2 Kings, the Lord never seems to get a people who completely put all the rubbish away from them at all. Even the good kings time and time again leave the high places, the Asherah poles, etc. And I just ask myself, are we like this, never able to put away all the sin and idolatry from our lives, from our hearts? There should only ever have been one king for Israel, and that's Jehovah. Have we let men lead us in error, and who do we put in his place? How many people say, but me pastor said, me pastor said, me pastor said. Forget what your pastor said. Your king is Yeshua. What did he say? Verse 17 says this, thou shalt not pervert the judgment of the stranger, nor the fatherless, nor take a widow's raiment to pledge. But thou shalt remember that thou was a bondman in Egypt, and Jehovah thy God redeemed thee thence. Therefore I command thee to do this thing. When thou cuttest down thine harvest in thy field, and hast forgot a sheaf in the field, thou shalt not go again to fetch it. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow, that Jehovah thy God may bless thee in all the work of thine hands. And when thou beatest thine olive tree, thou shalt not go over the boughs again. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. When thou gatherest the grapes of thy vineyard, thou shalt not glean it afterwards. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. And thou shalt remember that thou was a bondman in the land of Egypt. Therefore I command thee to do this thing. Don't forget that Jehovah rescued you. Don't forget how lost you were and how blind you were. Don't forget that it is only because of his mercy and grace that you have life. Then treat people accordingly. Don't look down your nose at anyone. Be always ready to consider the lowly, the hurt, the estranged, the people that Jehovah puts in your path, to give you the chance to show him how grateful you are that he rescued you when you were an undeserving wretch. That's the way to think about it, I think. And I just put a thing here saying, to some folk a kind word spoken to them is a precious thing. Yeah, just think of the opportunities you have in your life to show your gratitude to your Creator for what he's done for you by actually showing some kindness to somebody else. Okay, now begins the case of the sandal and not understanding the culture. I remember when I was at JP's bedroom when we first started reading the Torah, we read this bit of scripture. We sat around going, "Wow, this is nuts." Okay, we didn't understand what was being said. So I've kind of like tried to put it in such a way as we can understand something here. Okay, so this is about not understanding the culture, right? Okay. Two men, Billy and Fred from Birkenhead, are mentioned in Ted's diary. 2,000 years from now, people read the following entry. Okay, because you think about it, we've got the case of the sandal. 2,000 years later, we read the scriptures, yeah? We're not completely understanding of the culture. Okay, so imagine our culture, and in 2,000 years, people reading something that was written, that we might write. Okay, so two men, Billy and Fred from Birkenhead, are mentioned in Ted's diary. 2,000 years from now, they're looking at it, oh, this ancient document. And it's August the 16th, 2015, and it says this: Billy started taking the mickey and Fred saw his bum. Okay, do we all know what that means? I know what it means. Do you know what it means? Do you know what it means? Yeah, because you live in the culture of today. Okay, well, there might be people who watch this who don't actually know what it means as well. But just think about it. Billy started taking the mickey and Fred saw his bum. Not properly understanding the culture or language of the day, the following questions arise. Whose bum did Fred see? His own, Billy's, or Mickey's? If he saw Billy's bum, was this because Billy mooned him or because he had some sort of advanced X-ray vision that was ahead of its time? Who is Mickey? Is this a reference to Mickey Mouse, who we know was popular at the time? Did Fred have a Mickey Mouse doll that Billy kept taking? And if so, how did this cause the exposure of the bum that Fred was witnessing? Is Ted injected himself into the narrative as this Mickey character? Was Mickey an alter ego of Ted? And if it was actually Fred seeing his own bum, was this because either Mickey, Ted or Fred was holding a mirror up to him, or was he just very flexible? Can you see the nonsense that could be construed from not understanding the simple culture and what it actually means? And I've just put, can you imagine if it was a religion, how many different sects there would be? The Mooners, the Divine Order of the X-Ray Visionaries, and the Disney Doll Adventists. Can you imagine the nonsense that would come from it? And we've got all this nonsense because people run away with not a clue as to what the text is actually saying. Okay, to those who might be watching online and are not around these parts, the explanation is Billy started taking the mickey. Taking the mickey means to actually rib somebody. They probably don't know what that means. It means to, I don't even know how to say it without using the expression. Making fun of, that's the way you'd say it, isn't it? Billy started making fun of Fred, and Fred saw his bum. Fred saw his bum means Fred got annoyed. So all it is, Billy was making fun of Fred and Fred got annoyed. All the rest of it's nonsense. But can we apply this to what people do with the scriptures? Sometimes when reading Torah, it is good to have a little cultural insight. But don't let anyone accuse you of being all about head knowledge for desiring to study it and take it back to the simplicity of the original text, for desiring to see the true Messiah in every passage, in every mitzvah, to know the heart of Jehovah. Can you see how much trouble you can cause yourself if you don't actually look for what it actually means? Psalm 1:1-2, Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the Torah of Jehovah, and in his Torah doth he meditate day and night. And as Brad Scott says, we just want to take it back to the source before man got hold of it and complicated it all up and gave us garbled nonsense instead of the pure, undiluted message of the text. It's actually simple. Brad Scott does a really good job, doesn't he, explain it? It's just like a kid can understand it. The only way it gets complicated is when men have no understanding and add all this drivel like we just did to the Billy and Fred nonsense. Verse 5 says, If brethren dwell together and one of them die and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her and take her to him to wife and perform the duty of an husband's brother unto her. And it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel. And if the man like not to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gate unto the elders and say, My husband's brother refuses to raise up unto his brother a name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of my husband's brother. Then the elders of his city shall call him and speak unto him, and if he stand to it and say, I like not to take her, then, this is the bit where it got weird in JP's bedroom and we all got confused. Then shall his brother's wife come unto him in the presence of the elders and loose his shoe from off his foot. Like this, what? Spit in his face, and shall answer and say, So shall it be done unto that man that will not build up his brother's house, and his name shall be called in Israel, the house of him that hath his shoe loosed. That means not much to us, does it, in our society? Can you imagine? Hey you! You're the house of him that had his shoe loosed. How dare you! That's not going to happen, is it? You have to understand the culture of the day. Now, recently I've been watching Rico Cortez, and he talks about honour and shame. If you really want to understand what's going on here, you have to start understanding the culture. And I recommend checking out Rico Cortez's teaching on honour and shame, and it brings it all to life. You start going, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. Okay, but we'll move on, because this is bizarre as well. When men strive together one with another, and the wife of the one draweth near for him to deliver her husband out of the hand of him that smiteth him, and putteth forth her hand and take him by the secrets, then thou shalt cut off her hand, thine eye shall not pity her. Another completely, wow, what? Right, this text is not referring to amputating the hand, but rather depilation. This is one person's view of it, okay? This is a punishment of humiliation involving shaving a woman's pubic hair in the calf, the curved region below the waist. I had to look into this, and it was like, what is going on? I've written at the bottom, can't say I'm absolutely sure what's going on here, but that's not going to stop me from hearkening to Jehovah's voice. Just because I don't fully understand what's happening here doesn't mean I'm going to go, well, I'll blow it, I'm not going to bother. I don't think, from what I can gather, it means you cut an hand off. What it means when it says show no pity on her it means she needs to be punished because what she's done is really bad. But it's just like an eye for an eye. They never actually took somebody's eye off. They wouldn't take her hand off. What it's actually saying is...
chop the hands off. And
but that's not what there was no mutilation in the Torah. What it's actually saying is just because she's got the excuse, I was sticking up for my husband, don't take pity on her. She still has to be punished because it was still something she shouldn't have done. Because it's taken as a serious offence. Because for a start, a man's secrets contain not just whatever, they contain all his descendants, don't they? But as I say, I'm not completely sure what's going on here. But it's not going to worry me because I'm going to hearken to the Lord's voice and trust him in his wisdom. Right, judging others, we're going to not be too much further and then we'll finish. Thou shalt not have in thy bag diverse weights, a great and a small. Thou shalt not have in thine house diverse measures, a great and a small. But thou shalt have a perfect and just weight, a perfect and just measure shalt thou have, that thy days may be lengthened in the land, which Jehovah thy God giveth thee. For all that do such things, and all that do unrighteously, are an abomination unto Jehovah thy God. Okay, so what do we make of this? What about double standards? Could the concept of two sets of scales refer not only to cheating in commerce, but also to employing a double standard in judging others, judging ourselves and judging others? Do we accept in from ourselves thoughts, attitudes, words and conduct that we scoff at self-righteously in others? Yeshua taught us this: with what measure you use, it will be measured to you. And in 2 Corinthians 5:10 we're told this: for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Messiah, that each one may receive the things done in the body according to what he has done, whether good or bad. So bearing in mind, whatever measure you use, it will be measured to you. I could definitely do with being very generous in my estimations of others, because that's how I want to be judged, very generously. And we're all going to be judged, it tells us. So don't let this be you. Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, who summoned Daniel to read and interpret the writing which a mysterious hand had inscribed on the walls of the palace. When it was translated to him, it said this to him: you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Don't want that to be said of you, do you? See this picture here? When I was a kid, that was in, my dad had a book called the Bible Dictionary, and that picture was in it. I used to love that picture. I used to look at it and wonder, what's going on? What's going on? I didn't have a clue. It's like, wow. Look, Grace. From these verses in Daniel, we see that the reference to scales often applies to human attitudes and motives, feelings and desires, achievements and deeds. Jehovah will properly measure these as they apply to each of us. Proverbs 16:11, honest weights and scales are Jehovah's, all the weights in the bag at his word. He measures and weighs perfectly. There's no bias whatsoever. Jehovah won't be saying, by the way, when you're judged, oh, seeing as it's you. Okay. And remember this, Luke 12:2, there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known. James 2:13, for judgment is without mercy to the one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Take note of this. When we judge others without mercy, then according to our own non-merciful standards, we forfeit Jehovah's love and mercy in judgment of us. That's quite a sobering thought, isn't it? If you meet people who aren't merciful, and I've met a few, they're never happy anyway. Ridiculous. Being self-righteous, proud and conceited, and using false measures in weighing others against ourselves is a really, really bad idea. A really good idea is to be extremely generous in judging others and to be merciful. Acts 10:34, then Peter opened his mouth and he said, of a truth I perceive God is no respecter of persons. So this attitude, I don't know whether you know this, but I'm kind of a big deal, doesn't wash with Jehovah. James 4:6, he giveth more grace, wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but give grace unto the humble. Romans 1:32, who know in the judgments of God, this is talking about all the nonsense in the world, who know in the judgments of God that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do. Okay, do you take pleasure in the people who do all these horrible things that the Lord mentions in Romans 1? All the sin of the world. That's all mentioned in all the local newspapers and all the national newspapers. Romans 2:1-2. If there is you, and you take pleasure in all these things, therefore you are an excusable, O man, whoever you are who judge, for in whatever you judge another you condemn yourself. For you who judge practice the same things, But we know that the judgment of Jehovah is according to truth against those who practice such things. Distance yourself from sin and from the things of the world. Now, the final point, Amalek. We're told at the end to remember Amalek. Remember what Amalek did unto thee by the way, when you were come forth out of Egypt, how he met thee by the way and smote the hindermost of thee, even all that were feeble behind thee when thou wast faint and weary, and he feared not God. Therefore it shall be, when Jehovah thy God hath given thee rest from all thine enemies round about, in the land which Jehovah thy God giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, that thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Thou shalt not forget it. Okay, Strong says the name means dweller in the valley. The progenitor of these people is the descendants of Esau, a grandson born through the union of Esau's son Eliphaz with a concubine named Timnah. He's the worst of what Esau has to offer. Amalek, as we've just read, has no fear of Jehovah whatsoever. Amalek simply wants Jacob's descendants dead at whatever cost to himself and his people, because Amalek's problem is actually really with Jehovah. And as his people, we're told to remember Amalek. Who is Amalek? Amalek is not Esau. Esau was bad enough, wasn't he? He sold his birthright for some pottage or whatever it says. Amalek is not Esau. According to the Jewish sages, Esau is Rome, represented in today's world by the Western mentality. Amalek, on the other hand, is Rome gone berserk. Against him we have no choice but to make war. So if Esau is Rome, then Amalek is like the little horn power of the beast of Revelation. Amalek is the very power behind that which distorts our culture and mocks anything that glorifies Jehovah or speaks of his truth. Amalek is the power that seeks to destroy all things holy, the power that perverts and twists, that paints us as bigots and narrow-minded, intolerant haters every time we try to follow and walk in the ways of Jehovah. So what can we do against such an enemy? What tactics bring victory? We know, don't we, that there's an enemy. As we speak, I mean, everybody here is aware that there's an elite who are bringing together a plan that totally involves the annihilation of God's people. So what do we do against an enemy like this? Okay, and I've just put here, I've got nothing against a bit of prepping. The people who prep in America are crazy, aren't they? JP said this is nothing as well. They really know what to do when they, when you think about prepping, we put a rucksack together with a few tins of tuna in, and one of them Swiss Army knives. This is their idea. But I've got nothing against prepping. But what tactics bring victory? We look to the scriptures. What tactics brought victory? Well, in Exodus 17:11, check the picture out. It gives us a clue. As long as Moshe held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever Moshe's hands were lowered, the Amalekites were winning. Let us therefore lift up the mitzvah of Jehovah, hold them high for the world to see. In so doing, we will put Moshe on a rock. Remember, a rock is always a symbol of Messiah. And in so doing, we will hold up Moshe's hands. But even that is not the real key to success. The real key to success is Yehoshua. Exodus 17:13, it makes it clear Yehoshua overcame the Amalekites with the sword. And he's our Messiah, isn't he? He's a type. Yeshua will bring the final victory against Amalek, and we see that in Revelation. Because Jehovah is no pacifist. He will bring his victory. He will reign. So get right with him. Be merciful in judging others and start following the constitution of his kingdom, because he's coming. Revelation 19:20-21. The beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that had worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone. And the remnant was slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, which sword proceedeth out of his mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh. So let us be serious about serving our King. Remember this, it's not my will but yours, Father. Matthew 7:21. Not everyone that says to me, Jesus, Jesus, and there'll be loads, they will, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Psalm 40 verse 8 gives us a clue as to what his will is. I delight to do thy will, O my God, yea, thy Torah is within my heart. The mitzvah are all about connecting with our Elohim. Let us delight in them, as David did. And as a final point, and we'll finish. A little bit about vows. We've got the tale of Japheth. In Judges 11:32, he said, if you give the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites will be Jehovah's, and I will present myself with it as a korban Allah, a burnt offering. He goes back, he gets victory, and who comes out of his tent door but his daughter? Ugh. It's a bit of a tale of probably not a good idea to make vows. I wouldn't really advise anyone to be making big vows to the Lord, apart from the vow to follow his covenants and to be in relationship with him, to asar, to shema, his words. So a word of warning as well, if you're going to make vows, make sure that vows are not an attempt to manipulate Jehovah by our words or conduct. Vows to Jehovah can be a form of spiritual witchcraft, spirituality the pagan way. If you're trying to enforce your will over his will, that's not right. There is a vow mentioned favourably, besides the covenant to Asar and Shema, and that is the Nazir's vow, about which we read in Numbers 6. And that vow is all about voluntary surrendering to Jehovah's will, not about acting independently of Jehovah and trying to manipulate him to aid or support us in doing our will. Remember what Yeshua said when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, even when things got really tough, and he was sweating blood. He said, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. That should be our attitude in all things, yeah? Let's pray. And I love this picture. I was telling JP about it the other day. That's great, that, isn't it? He showed me some pictures of some silly animals, and I said, I've got one. Well, let's pray.